By the early 17th century, the once powerful Ndongo kingdom found itself completely surrounded and backed against a wall. This map details the historical borders of the Regna Congo at Angola. The Portuguese Empire was rapidly pushing inland from the Atlantic coast, expanding a highly lucrative, brutal slave trade and consuming indigenous territories. The reigning king of Ndongo, Ngola Mbande, was losing ground. His armies were failing and his borders were shrinking. Out of desperation, he sent his sister to the Portuguese stronghold of Luanda to negotiate a peace treaty. She arrived not as the designated heir to the throne, but as an emissary deployed at the last possible moment to stall an advancing empire. When Nzinga arrived in Luanda in 1622, she made an immediate visual statement. Instead of wearing European fashion to appease her hosts, she arrived in opulent, traditional Ndongan dress. The Portuguese governor, João Correia de Sousa, attempted a psychological tactic. He provided only floor mats for the African delegation, a setup designed to force Nzinga into a physically lower, subordinate position during the talks. Nzinga refused to sit on the floor. She signaled to an attendant, who dropped to her hands and knees to serve as a human chair. Nzinga took her seat on the attendant's back, negotiating eye to eye with the governor. She secured a peace treaty and established her diplomatic posture on day one. She would not accept a subordinate rank, and she would use the physical space of any room to prove it. The peace did not hold. Following her brother's death in 1624, Nzinga assumed the throne, and Portuguese forces immediately resumed their attacks. Mbundu society organized its military around defending specific, lineage-based territories. Nzinga realized that holding static land against European musketry and artillery was a guaranteed route to defeat. This diagram illustrates the vulnerability of traditional static defense networks crumbling under pressure. To survive, Nzinga adopted a radical alternative, the Quilombo system. It functioned as a professional, communal militia. By severing lineage ties, she built a landless army of highly disciplined guerrilla fighters. She moved her court to the Kindonga Islands in the Kwanza River. The winding waterways and dense topography created an untouchable natural fortress. Nzinga dismantled her people's traditional societal structures to construct a mobile strike force, one capable of bleeding Portuguese resources through endless hit-and-run tactics. But wearing down the Portuguese infantry was not enough to expel them from West Central Africa. She needed the leverage of a rival superpower. She reached out to the Dutch West India Company. By aligning with the Dutch, she opened a second front, forcing the Portuguese to defend their coastal monopolies while fighting her forces inland. The strategy culminated in 1647 at the Battle of Combi. Nzinga's archers fought alongside Dutch soldiers to completely rout the Portuguese army. Nzinga inserted her kingdom into European geopolitical conflicts, using their rivalries to secure Ndongo survival. While she fought the Portuguese, she faced a severe constitutional crisis at home. Traditionalist Mbundu nobles repeatedly allied with colonial forces because they refused to recognize a female ruler. To neutralize this domestic threat, Nzinga executed a cultural subversion of Mbundu law. She legally became a man. She discarded the title of queen and insisted on being crowned king. She adopted the masculine clothing and mannerisms of a traditional warlord. To complete the inversion, she maintained a harem of 50 to 60 young men. They were required to dress in feminine attire and act as her wives. By stepping entirely outside the gender binary, she satisfied the legal requirements of the throne and cut off the Portuguese strategy of funding male rivals. After 4 decades of constant warfare, the exhausted Portuguese colonial administration conceded. In 1657, they signed a peace treaty officially recognizing Nzinga's sovereign rule over Matamba and Ndongo. Her survival, however, relied on a harsh economic reality. To protect her core subjects from colonization, Nzinga actively participated in the transatlantic slave trade. This flowchart maps out the brutal 17th century guns for slaves cycle. She secured the European firearms needed to protect her state by capturing and exchanging human beings from neighboring regions. Nzinga died in 1663, over 80 years old. She passed away undefeated, leaving behind a centralized, heavily militarized kingdom. She navigated a fractured political landscape, and an encroaching empire by rewriting the local rules of warfare, diplomacy, and identity to keep her people sovereign.